At my mom's 60th, she raised a glass and announced that starting today, my $5,500 paycheck and bonuses would go to the family fund, or I was out. My brother backed her up. I stood, left without a word, and a few hours later, they were blowing up my phone. "You can't be serious," I whispered, holding on to the edge of the table so tightly that my knuckles turned white. But she didn't even flinch. My mom, looking all fancy in this gold dress, one that I had to pay for 6 months ago as an early birthday gift, stood at the head of the long table. She was surrounded by a bunch of relatives and raised her glass like she was celebrating some big promotion. Next to her, my older brother Julian nodded along, not the slightest bit of shame on his smug face. "I mean it," she said, grinning like this was some huge celebration. "Today marks a new chapter. The family fund is the future, and Michael, you'll be the foundation of it." Everyone in the room chuckled like it was some witty toast, like I was part of the joke, like this wasn't just a financial ambush at a birthday dinner. I slowly got to my feet, my chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. "You're joking," I said again, looking around the room. My cousin just looked away, and Carla suddenly found her wine glass incredibly fascinating. "No," Mom said, giving a small shrug. "It's only fair. You're doing well, and this is what families do. We help each other." Although in our family, help always seemed like a one-way street. Me giving, them taking. Julian crossed his arms and added, "We're trying to build something bigger than just individual success. You owe it to the family." I didn't say anything back. I just grabbed my coat from the chair, turned around, and walked out. I could hear my mom's voice calling after me down the hall, but I didn't stop. I just headed to my car, started the engine, and drove. Didn't really care where, just needed to get away. A few hours later, as I sat in the dark on the edge of my bed, my phone started buzzing. First it was Julian calling, then Mom, and then it just kept going until the texts began rolling in. "Call us back. It's an emergency. You can't just leave like that. Michael, we need to talk. Something's happened." I ignored the phone that night. Didn't answer when Mom texted 5 times in a row, pretending to be concerned. Didn't pick up when Julian left a voicemail that started with, "Mike, calm down," and ended with, "You're being immature." Because honestly, none of this was new. This wasn't just some random outburst at a birthday dinner. This was years of quiet exploitation, all dressed up as love. Let me take you back a bit. I'm 32 now, a systems engineer working for a high-performance cloud architecture firm in Seattle. My base salary is $5,500 a month after taxes. My bonuses? Pretty substantial. I'm good at what I do. Not flashy, but consistent. I pay rent on a small studio in Belltown, living below my means. I budget. I save. I don't party or blow money because, for the past 8 years, I've been bailing out my family. It started small. "Michael, honey, your brother just needs a little help covering rent this month. He's between jobs." That was when Julian quit his 3rd startup job because a corporate structure stifled his creativity. "Michael, sweetie, can you help us with the down payment for the new family car? We'll pay you back after the tax return." Spoiler alert, they didn't. That was 5 years ago. They still drive that car and still call it ours, even though I've never even sat in it. Then it got worse. When Dad passed, suddenly, an aneurysm, no warning. I stepped in because someone had to. I was 25, still paying off student loans, and suddenly I found myself covering the mortgage on a house I didn't live in. Julian, he was grieving, Mom said. He grieved all the way to Cancun with his girlfriend 2 weeks after the funeral. So I paid quietly, steadily, thinking that's what good sons do. Because whenever I tried to pull back, Mom would say things like, "Your father would be so proud of you," or, "You know, your brother isn't as lucky as you. He needs more support." Support. That word started to mean sacrifice your peace so we don't have to change. Julian burned through 3 failed businesses and never held a full-time job for more than a year. He called himself a serial entrepreneur, but he was really just a serial spender. Fancy suits, the latest tech, networking events in Napa Valley, all paid for by me, even if nobody said it aloud. One time, he literally sent me a Venmo request labeled Family Legacy Expansion. It was for $1,200. I declined it. He texted back, "Wow, way to be a team player." My mother called 5 minutes later. "Michael, what's going on with you? Julian's trying to build something and you're being spiteful." That's when I realized something ugly. I wasn't a son in this family. I was a donor, the bank, the one they could guilt into covering everyone's irresponsibility. So when that birthday dinner happened, I wasn't shocked. It was just the first time they'd said it so openly. The family fund wasn't new. It had always existed. It just used to be unspoken. My paycheck, their needs, my bonuses, their lifestyle, my boundaries, negotiable. But now, they were formalizing it, making my servitude official like I was just an employee. And what made it worse, so much worse, was that they expected me to be happy about it, to raise my glass and toast to it, to thank them for giving me the honor of funding their lives. That's why I left Woward, without another word. The next morning, I got a message from my cousin Jess. Quiet type, usually stays out of. So, there was this whole family drama thing going on, right? I was just checking in because I heard you left the party early. Is everything cool with you? I shot back a quick reply with just one sentence. Basically, they tried to act like my income was some kind of inheritance. Then, out of the blue, she called me up. Turns out, after I made my exit, things got wild. Julian was up there trying to keep the peace with a speech about how families should stick together. Mom ended up in tears, and Uncle Ray dropped one of his classic passive-aggressive lines about how selfish the younger folks are these days. Then, right in the middle of everything, Julian went and told everyone I'd agreed to start sending money to the family fund from that week on. But here's the kicker. I hadn't agreed to anything. Things got super tense when I didn't come back. No one really knew how to handle it. They waited around, tried calling me, and totally freaked out. And then, believe it or not, Julian went into our shared family Google Drive and started messing with a spreadsheet named Michael's Contributions 2024 Projected, like my cash was just another item on the budget. 3 days later, I got an envelope in the mail. Inside was a letter from Mom. Yep, a real letter, not an email or a phone call. It started with, "Dear Michael, we're worried about you." The letter went on about how I'd embarrassed her at her birthday party, saying my actions were hurtful and disruptive. According to her, if I wanted to stay in the family, I needed to learn to share my success. She threw in terms like emotional maturity and financial empathy, and even said, "You've always been the steady one. That means you have more responsibility." And the real kicker? They expected the first payment by Friday, and Julian was supposed to send me the bank details. No, sorry, no nothing, just expectations. They acted like I was some employee, not hitting my targets. I folded up the letter, slipped it back in the envelope, and tossed it into the trash. That's when I decided enough was enough. I stayed up most of the night, not just angry, but finally seeing things clearly. It was like I'd been in the dark for so long, and getting out felt liberating. I wasn't about to just vanish, though. They wanted a family fund? Fine. I'd give them something they'd never forget. The next morning, I called up HR and had my paycheck rerouted to a new account in a different bank that they didn't know about. I shut down the old account without saying a word. Then I signed a lease for a bigger one-bedroom place. No roommates, no shared anything, and definitely no Julian's freeloading buddies crashing over. The big move? I booked lunch at Mom's favorite fancy bistro, the one where she begged me to celebrate her 58th birthday just once because, traditions. I sent a message in the family group chat, yeah, we actually have one, saying, "Let's talk. Lunch tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'll cover the bill." Julian instantly hit me back with a thumbs up, and Mom replied, "I'm glad you're finally coming around. Bring the first deposit slip, sweetheart." That told me all I needed to know. They still thought they had me under their thumb. The next day, I rocked up in a tailored suit. I usually only wear suits at conferences, but I wanted to look them in the eye as their whole plan crumbled. Mom was already at the table, looking all pleased with herself, and Julian was there going through what seemed to be printed spreadsheets. I sat down quietly. "Michael," Mom started, reaching for my hand, "this is so good. I know emotions were high, but I always knew you'd come to your senses. You're just like your father. You get family responsibility." Julian pushed a document my way, saying, "Here's a draft of the monthly transfers," while taking a sip of his drink. They'd factored in my last 3 bonuses, and it came to $1,800 a month. On top of rent, groceries, utilities, it left me barely anything for my own expenses. Plus, they wanted a big chunk of any bonuses over $10,000 and a percentage of freelance work. "Modest," Julian repeated with this grin that made me want to flip the table. I leaned back and asked, "Okay, but what exactly does the family fund do?" Mom blinked, saying, "It supports everyone." "Who's everyone?" I asked. "Your brother's startup is still in the works, and I'm not working because of my sciatica, and Uncle Ray is out of a job," she explained. "So, not me," I clarified. "Everyone else, Michael. Don't be petty," she replied. I picked up the contract and skimmed through. It was like Julian tried to make it look like a legal agreement, like he was running a trust fund or something. "Is this a joke?" I asked, to which Julian said, "Don't start, man. You agreed." "No, you announced it, and everyone just went along with it like I was some kind of Santa Claus. I left because you tried to trap me into financially propping up a family of grown-ups who won't take responsibility for themselves." Silence. Mom leaned in with that soft, manipulative tone. "Sweetheart, you've always been the strong one. You've always supported us." "Exactly," I said, "and I'm done." Her eyes widened. "Excuse me?" I stood up, dropped the contract on my plate. "I'm done funding Julian's failure tour. I'm done paying for your vacations that you call emergencies. And I'm done pretending that love means sacrifice." "Michael," she gasped, "don't talk to your mother." So it was like, "No way. You're not laying that guilt trip on me again. You can't keep calling me ungrateful when you've been bleeding me dry for years." Julian stood up, trying to calm the situation down. "Bro, take it easy," he said, but I turned to him. "Dude, you're 35. It's time to grow up. Get a job. You're not building some great legacy here, Julian. You're just hanging on to one that someone else made." I could see his jaw tighten. "Oh, so you think you're better than everyone else now?" he snapped. "No," I replied, "but I'm definitely better than this nonsense." I pulled out a manila folder, dropping it on the table with a thud. "What's this?" Mom asked, curiosity mixed with concern. "Receipts," I said. "Every transfer, every so-called gift, every loan you promised to pay back. It's over $78,000. I did all the math." Julian let out a sarcastic snort. "Oh, so you're keeping score now?" he mocked. I looked him straight in the eye and said, "Yes, because you never did." I walked away, not even turning back when Mom called my name. That night, the messages started pouring in. Julian was upset, saying I embarrassed Mom and acted childish. Mom tried to brush it off, saying it's just a phase and I'd cool down, urging me to call her. Then silence. Just 2 days in, chaos began. Julian's startup investors, or rather our family connections, started pulling out. Word got around that I had stopped backing the venture. And guess who they thought was the main financial supporter? Yours truly. Without my name in the mix, the entire operation looked like a sham and fell apart because, honestly, it was. The calls from Uncle Ray started coming in, followed by Aunt Carla, and then a voicemail from Mom that began calm but ended in tears. "Michael, please, your brother Matt. Dear mistake. We just need a little help to get through the quarter. Then we can sort out the numbers." No way, not this time. The fallout was instant. The moment I left that lunch, it was like pulling the bottom block out of a Jenga tower that had been balanced on my shoulders for ages. Everything came crashing down quickly and loudly. I changed my number that very afternoon. No more, "Can we talk for a minute?" voicemails from Julian. No more, "Michael, we didn't mean it like that," texts from Mom. I was done with being the family janitor. For the first time in what felt like forever, the silence was my own, and it was absolutely glorious. They didn't handle it well, not at all. By the end of that week, Julian emailed me with the subject line, "Urgent, please read." His company, which I had been quietly funding for years, was falling apart. 2 investors backed out, and their biggest supplier bailed once they realized I, the supposed lead financial backer, was no longer involved. Apparently, Julian had been tossing my name around in pitches without my knowledge, making claims like, "My brothers got us covered through Q4, and we have 6 figures of runway, thanks to family support." All lies, all built on the assumption I'd never walk away. But I did, and the fragile financial house of cards he built using my name crumbled within days. Mom started calling from burner numbers. I ignored them all. Then an email came in with the subject line, "It's not too late to fix this." Fix what, exactly? Their relentless dependence on me? Their long-standing belief that I existed solely to fund their lifestyles? There was nothing left to fix. There was only my freedom to claim. Within 2 weeks, I moved into my new apartment. It was bigger than I needed, modern, with a door that locked like a fortress. The kind of door no one could just waltz through to borrow Wi-Fi or crash for a weekend. My paycheck was finally mine. I bought groceries without worrying about setting aside money for Mom's dental work or Julian's latest phone emergency. I invested in new gear for my side hustle, joined a gym, and finally got some sleep. For the first time, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see exhaustion. I saw me. It felt surreal and beautiful. Then the real family fallout began. Uncle Ray called, the same guy who once told me money in families flows upward, as if I were a fountain. He wanted to discuss how I was handling things. I told him I'd only communicate through email. He never followed up. Aunt Carla messaged me on Facebook, asking if I was all right, saying Mom was devastated and Julian looked like a ghost. I left her on read. But Cousin Jess, she was different. "Whatever you said to them," she texted, "you shook the entire family tree." I laughed, and for once it didn't feel bitter. It felt deserved. Then came the breaking point. A month after I cut them off, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. "Michael," it was Mom. Her voice was small, unfamiliar. "I'm at your building. I just want to talk." I almost hung up. Almost. But a small part of me, the part that remembered when things were simpler before the manipulation, said, "Give her 5 minutes." Just 5. She was waiting in the lobby, holding a Tupperware container like a peace offering. Inside was my favorite, roast chicken and rice, just like when I was a kid. She didn't smile, didn't fake it, just asked, "Can we sit?" We found 2 chairs in a corner, and I stayed silent. She began slowly. "I didn't realize what we were doing to you." "Not really." I raised an eyebrow. It took a public meltdown and financial implosion for that? She winced. I know, I know. Now how it sounds. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Receipts. Every transaction, every deposit, every transfer I'd made to cover the mortgage. Julian's failed startups. The crew she claimed was a gift. So, I got this letter from a friend that added up to a whopping $78,450. Julian had mentioned that you kept track of everything, but I brushed it off, thinking you were just being distant. When I finally saw the numbers, it hit me. You weren't being cold, you were just trying to survive. Like conducting a financial autopsy. She told me she didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she finally got it. All of it. Then she dropped the bombshell. We used you. Not leaned on or asked for help, but used. She confessed she thought she was being a good mom, but realized she'd treated me as her personal bank account. And whenever I stood up for myself, she called me ungrateful. Her voice broke up as she apologized deeply. I was speechless, letting her words ring in my ears like a church bell after service. She left a folder on the chair next to me and walked out. A week later, Julian texted me. No drama, just a simple message saying, "You were right, I'm starting over for real this time." He also sent a picture of himself in a work vest, holding a clipboard at a warehouse job. Minimum wage, real effort. I didn't reply, but I couldn't help but smile. They never got it. Cutting them off wasn't about getting even. It was about finding my own way back to a life that was slowly losing its spark. One Venmo request at a time. Last Friday, I decided to treat myself to a nice dinner. Just me, at a table for one, with a candle and a glass of wine. I sat there scrolling through apartment listings, not because I had to move, but because I finally could. My phone buzzed. It was Jess. She said she was proud of me, telling me I'd lit the match and now they had to deal with the heat. And I did feel it. They always thought I'd come running back, as I had before. Whenever I set a boundary, they'd test it until I caved. Every firm no turned into a maybe, and every promise of one last time became just another exception. But not this time. This time, I vanished and stayed gone. It drove them crazy for a while. Mom tried everything. Texts, calls, emails, voicemails, all talking about how close we once were. Julian sent me guilt-ridden messages trying to pull me back into the role I was expected to fill. The fixer, the financial safety net. But I ignored them. With silence stretching out longer than they expected, they panicked. Their usual plan had failed, and I didn't come crawling back to fix anything. The best part was that my life improved instantly. My bank balance finally stopped plummeting for reasons unrelated to me. Weekends were mine again. I started sleeping better, eating better, and genuinely smiling. I was no longer just getting by. I was actually healing and reclaiming my life. I picked up old hobbies, took a real vacation, and treated myself to what I once considered unnecessary luxuries because someone else's emergency always took priority. I even started dating someone who cared more about who I was than what I earned. For the first time as an adult, I felt this wild, unfamiliar sensation. Peace. Months later, Mom sent me a letter. It was handwritten, tear-streaked, full of excuses about how they were just trying to survive and how Julian was struggling. She called it a misunderstanding, but to me, it felt like a decade of financial pressure I couldn't question. She begged me to come home for Thanksgiving, saying the family missed me and that things weren't the same without me. I almost laughed because, and for the first time, my world felt just right. Julian went off-grid not long after. Jess mentioned he moved in with a friend after his startup fell apart. No investors, no income, just debt. She said he was finally experiencing real life without a safety net. Without me. Good. Let him grow under the same weight I carried alone. Maybe then he'd get it. Maybe he wouldn't. but saving him wasn't my responsibility anymore. The truth is, they never really loved me. They loved what I did for them. When I stopped producing and sacrificing, they turned cold and called me a traitor. In their eyes, saying no was the ultimate crime. But I'd rather be disliked for walking away than loved for being a doormat. Now they live with their choice, and I live with mine. Just last week, I was at my favorite cafe, sipping the most overpriced coffee, smiling. Not because of the view or the calmness around me, but because the money I spent was mine, earned by me and spent on me. It wasn't sucked into a never-ending family black hole or taken under the guise of family bonding. Just mine. That might not seem like much to some, but to me, it was pure freedom. So, here's the real takeaway. You don't owe your family your paycheck. You don't owe them your peace or your life just because you're related. The moment they start treating you like an asset instead of a person, you owe them nothing. They called me cold, heartless, and ungrateful. Fine, let them. I'd much rather be ungrateful than used. I'd prefer being alone to being drained. I'd rather be free, completely, powerfully, and unapologetically free. And now I truly am. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy hearing stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.